The point of this video is to show you how to replace the battery in your R36H and then to show you the internals of the handheld should you be interested in that. So let's begin. The very first thing we need to do to replace the battery, and bear with me, if you haven't done anything like this before, it's extremely simple. It's just a matter of sliding open this battery door and then handling one single battery connector inside. To access the battery compartment, you just need to turn the device around and then slide open this battery door. Once you've done that, you'll notice the battery right here. You can lift it up using either your fingers or a pry tool like this. Do this carefully, because in a second we will reveal a wire that connects the battery to the motherboard. And here it is. You don't want to damage that, and more specifically, you don't want to damage the small connector that's in here. So once we have the battery lifted up, the only thing that's left to do is to remove that small plug. This is a small 2-pin JST plug, which is pretty typical on these kind of devices. And the best way to remove it is to just slowly wiggle it around and then wiggle it out of the socket using your fingers. Let me just show you this from up close so you can see what's happening here. This connector is just sitting in the socket, and the only thing you need to do to remove it is to just gently grab it with your fingers like this, and then slowly wiggle it left and right like this until it comes out. Do this very gently so as not to damage the port. And then, just like that, it's out. Now a quick thing about the batteries you can get for the R36H. The R36H uses a 504-575 3.7 volts battery. These numbers here denote the battery's size. So according to these numbers here, and according to what's really here in my hands, it's 5 millimeters here, 45 here, and then 75 here. Many of you will also have the question, can I put a larger battery in it, in terms of capacity? And the answer to that is, well, in theory you could, but most, if not all batteries of this type and size will be the capacity of 2500 to 3000 milliamp hours. There is not really much more room here to fit cells of larger capacity. So if you see a battery of this size with those same numbers claiming 4000 or 4500 milliamp hours, it's most likely fake. So just keep that in mind. Another great thing is that this is a very popular battery size. You can get this in many places online, including Amazon, AliExpress, and so on. I leave the links for you for compatible batteries in the description below. Once you have your new battery, so let's just say this is your new battery, the only thing you need to do is to do exactly the same thing we did, just in reverse. There is just one important thing to mention here. This 2-pin connector has a certain polarity. What does this mean? Well, this is plus and this is minus. Usually, you'd be able to tell by the colors of the wires. Here, the wire is covered by the insulation, the black coating, so you cannot see the wire colors. But one of the wires inside, I don't know if you can see it like this, one of the wires will be black and the other will be red. The red denotes the positive terminal and the black the negative. This has to directly align with the positive and negative terminal here on the connector. Connecting it in a different way would be pretty hard because this connector is designed specifically in a way so that it would be harder to fit it the other way around. But I guess it would be possible if you for some reason were to use more force to just push it in. So just mind that the connector and the wire colors have to match exactly what's written here, and you need to connect the battery in the correct way. So either remember what the connector looks like when you're unplugging the battery, or just mind that the polarity when you connect the battery has to be right. Connecting the battery is just a matter of doing this. So just aligning the pins on the connector with the pins here. And then, just as we were doing when we were removing the battery, slowly wiggling the connector inside. Once you're sure that it sits tightly in here, so that it cannot be easily removed or it won't fall out, you can just put the battery like it was before. Just hide the wire inside, here. And once you've done that, the only thing that's left to do is, of course, to put the cover back on. And you're done. Just like that. There isn't really much that can go wrong here. You can either connect the battery correctly or connect it the other way around somehow and damage your device. There aren't really many points of failure here. So now you know how to safely remove your battery and then put it back in. This means that we can get back on track and follow up with the disassembly. Just like before, we will just take the battery, wiggle the connector out of the socket, put the battery aside, and then as you can see, the first interesting thing is revealed. It's the motherboard number here. The R36H can come with different motherboards. This is the version 21 and the exact revision that you can see here, but yours might come with the version 20 or so. There are a few differences between those models, so yours might not look exactly like mine when it comes to its insides. To proceed with the teardown, the only thing we need is the small Phillips screwdriver. We have 4 small screws here, all of which we need to remove to get to the inside. Luckily there are no screws underneath the rubber pads, which I was pretty worried about when I first saw this device. Carefully remove the screws and just remember to put them aside so that you can find them later. Losing screws is unfortunately a thing that I'm very good at, so don't be like me. Once we have all the 4 screws removed, we can safely remove the back. The back is held by a few latches here. These latches are reasonably easy to remove, but we'll need to use a pry tool to do that. It's very hard to do that with just your fingers. You in theory could just attempt to use your fingernails to open that up, but I wouldn't advise that. By the way, you can get a pry tool like this and a full set of accessories for disassembling phones and electronics for just a few dollars over on AliExpress. I leave a link to a set that I use in the description below. So, to open this up, we need to find a place where the pry tool can be inserted. This has to be done with some force, but carefully enough not to damage the latches. And just like that, the first latch is open. Here, you can see. Now all the latches on the top are open here. And then we need to proceed to the bottom, because there are a few latches here. Just along the edge here. And just gently lift up. From now on you can continue using your fingers, because this will be much easier to pry. And we're done. Now the back is fully open and we can see the motherboard. Now let's just take a minute to appreciate this thing. The most important part of this handheld is the Rockchip 3326. This is the SoC that is used on many other emulation devices, a very popular one, including in most of the R36S family devices and clones. This one, if the Rockchip datasheet doesn't lie to us, was assembled or marked in week 26 of 2025, so I believe this is around June. These are D9PXV DDR3L SDRAM chips from Micron. The R36H has 1GB RAM total, arranged as a 32-bit bus, so 16 bits per module. Going right underneath here, so underneath RAM, we can see the empty footprint for the Wi-Fi module. According to the findings of the community, there are 2 Wi-Fi modules that are compatible with this device. This will be shown here in the video and also linked below. There are many people that have successfully done a Wi-Fi upgrade on these devices, both on the V20 and V21 motherboards. A curious thing is that some R36H devices come with the Wi-Fi chip already soldered on. So it's pretty much kind of a lottery whether you get or don't get the Wi-Fi chip with your device, because there isn't really anything in the product listings that denotes if the console has or doesn't have the Wi-Fi chip soldered on. Nevertheless, if you know what you're doing and you can solder, this upgrade is relatively easy. Right over here we can see a 2-pin connector, and next to it the letter R. This is a lead cable that's connected to the right speaker. On the other side we can see an analogous contraption here, which is another lead cable connected to the left speaker. As we will be disassembling the device further, I'll just quickly go ahead and remove them. Just as with the battery plug, the correct way here is to slowly wiggle it left and right, just gently do it so as not to break it off. And after a few wiggles, we're done. And now the other side. So, taking a short break from exploring the motherboard, I want to talk about the shoulder buttons. The shoulder buttons here are very easy to remove. In fact, if you're following this disassembly yourself, they might have already fallen out of your device. This is how easy they are to remove. They are held down, they are physically held down only by this element here, which is locked in place by this little hole. And the very same with this one here. For now, we'll just remove them and put them aside. Just like that. And we can take a closer look and appreciate the small chip switches that are on here. Very similar switches here are used for the volume buttons and the power and reset button. Coming back to the mainboard exploration, another interesting part is on the right side. Here we have the Rockchip PMIC. This small chip here is responsible for power management, charging, battery monitoring, RTC, and a few audio-related functions. Right next to it, on the right side, we can see a large metal-encased thing. This is the analog stick. It connects via this small ribbon cable to the motherboard here. There are also two screws here, which we can use to remove it, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Right in between the PMIC and the analog stick, a little farther down, we can see the very much small SG microchip here. This small chip is a low-voltage 4-to-1 analog switch. Here, this is likely used for routing the analog signals from the stick to the mainboard. Here is the battery connector area that we've seen earlier, the 2-pin JST socket. And here, this small empty space with the motor here is the space where you would mount a rumble motor. This is quite an interesting topic because, as far as I know, on devices with the motherboard version 20, you can rather easily do a rumble mod here by just simply correctly connecting the rumble motor to those contacts here. On V21 versions though, there seems to be an issue where even if you connect the rumble motor correctly, it will just stay on all the time. I found a great article about this issue written by someone with much more experience with those things than me, and I leave it linked in the description below. So that's pretty much it here. We've got the TF card slots, we've got the USB ports, and well, another interesting thing here is this ribbon cable. This ribbon cable is used to connect the motherboard to the display that's on the other side. So now let's just move on, unscrew the motherboard from the front part of the casing, and then we'll be able to take a closer look at the front buttons as well as the display. For that we will use the exact Phillips screwdriver that we used to remove the back part of the casing. Here again we have 4 screws holding down the motherboard. One is here, the second one here, the third one here, and the fourth one right here. So let me just quickly unscrew them all. And we're done. Both when removing and when putting back the small ribbon cable that comes from the analog stick to the motherboard, be mindful of this little part here. You can actually do this with this small flap. Take a look. You can lift it up, and once it's lifted up, the ribbon cable is no longer held in place by it. It's just a little locking mechanism. So, when you're putting the ribbon cable back, just remember to lock it back in place by doing this. And now it's locked in place and cannot be removed. While you oftentimes can remove the cable without disengaging this small lock, putting it back in without doing so is not possible. So just keep that in mind. Now let's just gently unscrew these. Here you can see the joysticks from up close. And now both the analog sticks are unplugged. Just a quick reminder to always keep track of all of your screws. These are smaller than the regular ones that the case uses, so make sure not to confuse them. Once you've done that, the only thing that's left to do is to disconnect the main display ribbon cable. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand corrected. You don't actually need to remove the ribbon cable to get to the front of the console. The ribbon cable is long enough for you to be able to do this very carefully again, because this is very fragile, and you'll have access to the front buttons. We have the rubber here, that is just connecting the buttons to the switches below. So that's its place. And then we have the buttons themselves, which if I just lift up here, you can see come in sets of 2, they are interconnected. The Y and B buttons are connected, as well as the X and A button. In theory, you could just sever these connections and those buttons should feel a little bit less tight, but don't take my word for that. And then we have, of course, those very small start and select buttons that look like this. Here is the D-pad. We can see that the D-pad makes use of a similar rubber part. Just lift it up. And the D-pad looks like this. And this from the other side. And the last part, let's just move it up gently, very gently. And here we have the button contacts. Here are the button contacts for the face buttons, and here are the contacts for the D-pad. There is not much else going on this side of the board, aside from the start and select button switches that we can see here. As I already said, the screen is connected to the mainboard using this ribbon cable here, and once again this part is very fragile, this whole part, so make absolutely sure that you're handling it slowly and gently. Here is a close-up of the screen connection. And this is pretty much it. I won't attempt to disassemble the screen itself, as there doesn't seem to really be an easy way to do that, so that's pretty much everything for now. Now to put the device back together, traditionally, you do everything we just did, but in reverse. Remember that the speaker cable should go through here, not through here. Align this correctly, so that the ribbon cable can go right in. If during the disassembly something like this happens to your buttons, then just know that you have to reposition the rubber underneath. When putting on the back, you just gently need to press it to engage the latches. And on this side too. At this point, it's a very good idea to check if all of the buttons are working correctly. So just press them around, see if they don't have any issues, they are not mushy. If your front buttons here, so the D-pad or those front buttons are mushy, or they just come in and don't come back out, this means that you haven't positioned the rubber inside correctly. The rubber underneath has to be directly aligned with the buttons so that they can easily bounce back. If it isn't positioned correctly, they will either feel uneven or just stay pressed in instead of bounce back. The last thing to do is to connect the battery. Remember about the polarity of the connector. Now let's just close the lid. And now comes the moment of truth. The console works. So, in short, that was how to fully disassemble and then assemble again the R36H. I hope some of this was at least somewhat useful to you. And if you'd like more content like this with various different tech gizmos, then feel free to leave a sub or a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye.